Bill has always considered himself lucky. He was born into a simple family, worked with his hands all his life, but always had something to put on the table. Long ago, he met Sarah, a smart, beautiful woman who seemed to understand him better than anyone else. They got married when they were young and lived together for over 30 years. Their 2 children have long since grown up and left to live their own lives, and they are left alone in their small but cozy home. Lately, Bill had been noticing more and more that Sarah was different. She worked for an insurance company and always stayed late at work, but it hadn't seemed so suspicious before. She was coming home later than usual, refusing to have dinners together more often, and she was keeping some secrets. And most importantly, her phone never left her hand. One day, when Bill came home a little earlier than usual, he heard Sarah talking on the phone. Her voice was muffled, almost gentle. As soon as she noticed him, she quickly ended the conversation. That was Linda, a colleague of mine," she said quickly, not even giving him a chance to ask. Bill nodded, but the first doubt had already settled in his mind. Why he knew that Sarah had never liked Linda. Why would she suddenly speak to her in that voice? The following weeks brought even more questions. Sarah began to change her style of dress. Instead of the usual suit for work, she wore expensive dresses, new makeup, even perfume, which she had never owned before. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he asked one evening. Has something changed at work?" She stopped for a minute and then laughed. "I just wanted to update something," she replied. Bill wanted to believe it was true, but his inner voice was telling him otherwise. One day, Bill decided to stop by Sarah's house during his lunch break to surprise her. He bought her favorite sandwich and coffee and went to her office, but she wasn't there. Sarah, she went out for a long lunch today, the secretary said, not realizing that this information would take Bill by surprise. A long lunch? She said she was going to be busy all day. Though as he was leaving the office, he happened to see her across the street. She was standing next to a tall man in an expensive suit. They were laughing. Sarah was touching his arm. The blood rushed to Bill's face. He wanted to go over and ask her directly, but something stopped him. "No, it's just a colleague," he tried to reassure himself. But something dark and cold was already growing in his heart. A suspicion that everything would soon change. Bill could not forget that moment. Sarah laughing, touching the other man's arm, and then looking at him the way she had once looked at him. His heart was pounding as if he had run a marathon. His head was buzzing. Maybe he's just a friend. Maybe I'm exaggerating. But why does it hurt so much? That night he didn't say a word to her. He just sat on the couch pretending to watch TV while she was on the phone in the bathroom. "Yes, of course." "Me too." She whispered, trying to keep her voice low. Bill was not a jealous man. In all their married life, he had never checked her phone, never inquired about who she was spending time with. But this time, when Sarah went to the shower, he picked up her phone, his hands shaking a little. There was no password. She never did. The correspondence was short, but every word hit like a hammer. "I can't wait to see you again. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." I don't think he suspects anything. The last sentence made Bill clutch the phone so tightly that his fingers turned white. He didn't suspect anything. Oh, if only she knew. He put the phone down, leaned back on the couch, and closed his eyes. Sarah had lied to him. Though the next morning he decided to find out more. If this is a lover, who is he? Where are they meeting? How long has it been going on? Instead of going to work, he got in his car and followed Sarah. As usual, she kissed him before leaving, but now he knew that this tenderness was a deception. She parked outside the same office, but instead of going inside, she headed in the other direction. And a few minutes later, Bill saw the same man in an expensive suit approaching her. He could have gotten out of the car. He could have yelled at them in the middle of the street. But he just sat there and watched his wife hugging another man. He felt like he was suffocating. That night he waited for her at home, already knowing what he had to do. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said when she came in. She took off her heels and nervously straightened her hair. Oh, about what?" "About him." Bill looked her straight in the eye. Sarah froze. Bill, I don't know what you're talking about. I saw you today, with him, and I read your messages." Her face paled, and then she changed before my eyes. "That you went through my phone? Is that all you have to say?" His voice shook with anger. "No explanation, no regrets." Sarah sighed and seemed to decide to stop playing. "I didn't want you to find out this way." "How?" "That my wife was cheating on me. How else could I have found out?" She didn't say anything. "Who is he?" Bill felt he needed to hear it from her. His name is Mark. He's successful, She stopped. He's rich." Bill finished for her. Sarah looked down at him guiltily. He felt something breaking inside him. Was their whole life a lie? He didn't know then that this was only the beginning. Bill sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of cold coffee. Sarah had packed her things, her suitcase standing by the door. The smell of her perfume hung in the air, the delicate, expensive scent he had once loved so much. No, now it disgusted him. "Are you sure you don't want to talk?" Her voice was calm, even gentle. Bill looked up. "What is there to talk about? You've made your choice." Sarah bit her lip as if she wanted to say something, but didn't. You? No, Mark and I, we're serious. He wants me to move in with him. Of course I understand." His voice was steady. He didn't want to give her the pleasure of seeing him in pain. Sarah took a step toward him. You're strong, Bill. You'll get through this. I'm leaving you the house," she sighed. "But you're going to have to take care of the payments." Bill almost laughed. "Huh. You mean I have to pay off the house we plan to spend our old age in by myself?" Mark has other plans. He wants to live in the country, in a bigger house. "Of course," he grimaced. "Mark is the kind of man who only wants the best." She didn't say anything. I just went over and touched his shoulder. I didn't mean to hurt you, Bill." He jerked her hand away. Go." Sarah stood there for a few seconds, then picked up her suitcase, opened the door, and walked out. Bill heard the car door slam, the engine roar, and she drove off. And then there was silence. He sat in this house that now seemed huge and cold. On the kitchen table were papers on the reissuance of payments. It was all his responsibility now. He picked up the phone. Jim. "Can I spend the night at your place?" Jim had been his best friend since high school. He didn't ask. "Sure, buddy. I'll be waiting." Bill left the house, slamming the door. The next day he woke up in Jim's guest room, staring at the ceiling. "Get up," his friend said. "I know you want to just lie there and beat yourself up, but you should get some coffee." Bill struggled to get up. "I don't know what's next." Jim put a cup in front of him. "Will, to begin with, this house is a burden. Sell it. No buts. Let's be honest, you can't afford the payments. You need to move on, not live in memories." Bill thought about it. "What am I supposed to do?" "Take a break. Take a break. Look around you. Maybe this is not the end, but the beginning." That same day, Bill met with a real estate agent. This is a great house," the agent said as he looked around the rooms. "You'll get good money for it." But Bill felt his heart clench. But he knew it was the right thing to do, or put it on the market. He was no longer holding on to the past. Everything would be different now. Bill stood outside his new home, a small but cozy house on the coast. He had sold his old mansion, paid off all his debts, and bought this place where the wind smelled like salt and the sunrises were so beautiful they took his breath away. It was not the life he had planned. But maybe it was exactly what he needed. Mornings began with coffee on the porch. No quarrels, no painful memories. He got used to this loneliness, even began to enjoy it. But, as you know, when you stop waiting for change, it knocks on your door. One day, Bill went to a small coffee shop in the center of town. He ordered a black coffee and was about to leave when he heard a familiar voicing. "Jesus, Bill, is that really you?" He turned around. Standing before him was a woman he hadn't seen in years. Molly, his first love. Oh, the woman he'd lost to the foolishness of his youth. Molly. He blinked in surprise. She smiled. "I thought you were still in the big city doing business." Not anymore," he smiled back. "And you?" Oh, I came back a few years ago. I opened my own little shop." Bill couldn't take his eyes off her. She hadn't changed much. Still the same smile, the same sparkling eyes. "Would you like to have coffee together?" he asked timidly. Molly smiled even wider. "I'm all for it." They sat on the terrace of the coffee shop, talking and laughing. Molly told him about her life, how she had been married twice, how she had realized that happiness did not depend on status or money. Bill listened and caught himself thinking that for the first time in a long time he was relieved. "I heard about your Sarah," she suddenly said. Bill sighed. "Well, yes, she left me for a richer option. And then?" "Then what?" He hesitated, needless to say. Then she turned around. Molly raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Oh, what? She came back?" Bill nodded. Last week. She came to me in tears. Mark dumped her. She has no money, no place to live." As she asked for help, Molly looked at him carefully. "And what did you do?" He looked away. Nothing. I don't know what to do. Part of me just wants to close this chapter forever. But there's another part of me that hasn't let go yet." Bill smiled sadly. "Maybe." Molly put her hand on his palm. "Listen, Bill, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but think about it. Does this person really deserve a second chance? Or is she just using you?" Bill was silent. He knew the answer was already in his head. Now he just had to accept it. Bill felt like his life was finally starting to get better. Molly came into his life like fresh air after a stifling storm. And they saw each other almost every day, long walks, laughing, talking about life. It was so easy that he could hardly believe it. Molly was different, not like Sarah. She didn't ask about his wealth, wasn't interested in his past business. A cup of coffee and a chat about the good old days was enough for her. "Bill, you're happy again," she said one day. "Yes," he replied, and it was true. But somewhere deep down inside, something was bothering him. One evening, when Bill went out on the porch, he saw a car parked around the corner of his street. The headlights were off, but the driver's silhouette did not move. His heart sped up. He knew it was Sarah, and that meant she wasn't out of his life yet. The next day he received a message. "We need to talk. I'll be waiting at a cafe near the port." Bill knew it was a bad idea, but he also knew that if he didn't go, Sarah would find a way to get inside his head. When he walked into the cafe, she was already waiting. She looked better than the last time, as if she had regained her confidence. "Hi," she said with a smile. "Hi," he replied coldly. He sat down across from her and folded his arms across his chest. "Tell me. I know you hate me," she began. Actually, I don't," he said, "but I'm not the fool you left me." She sighed and looked him straight in the eye. "I want everything back." Bill felt his breath catch in his throat. "What? I made a mistake," she said, taking his hand. "I know you still love me." Bill jerked her hand away. "Are you serious? Bill, enough?" He raised his voice. "You left me with nothing." "Sarah, and now that you're sick, you want to come back." Sarah pressed her lips together, her eyes glistening. "I'm still your wife, Bill." He froze. "What did you say?" "You didn't file for divorce." He felt his insides tighten. "So what?" Sarah leaned back and smiled smugly. "So what if I'm legally entitled to half of what you have left?" Bill felt the blood rush to his head. Sarah stood up, looked down at him, and left him. "Think about it, dear. You have a choice. Either we start from scratch, or I take everything I can from you." And she disappeared behind the door. Bill sat there, staring at her empty space. It seemed to him that the ground had slipped from under his feet again. Bill could not sleep. He lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, while Sarah's words echoed in his head. "I'm still your wife. I'm entitled to half of what you have left." Anger, fear, disappointment all mixed together in a lump that squeezed him from the inside. He knew he had to act. In the morning, he went to see a lawyer to finally close the case. But when he heard the numbers, he was filled with cold terror. If she sues, the lawyer said, she can claim half of your house. But she left me. The law doesn't care about that. You're not divorced, so she has rights. Will could not believe it. His home was his only place, his peace, and now she could take it away. Sarah seemed to know when to come back. She had given him a few years of peace, and now that he was back on his feet, she decided to take what was hers. He spent the whole day thinking about it. The only option is a quick divorce, but will he have time to do it before she takes action? And in the evening he received a message. Meet me at our old place. I'll be waiting. The old place. Their former favorite tavern near the pier. Bill looked at the screen for a long time. To go or not to go. In the end, he decided to go. He had to find out once and for all. When he walked in, Sarah was already waiting. She looked completely different from the one in the cafe. She was relaxed, smiling, confident. She was holding a glass of red wine in her hand and smiling slyly. I knew you would come, she said. Don't be under any illusions. I'm here to end it all. Finish. She took a sip of wine, or maybe start over. Bill clenched his fists. Sarah, what are you up to? She leaned closer, her voice soft and seductive. What if I want to fix the mistake? What if we can still take it back? He laughed. After everything. Sarah sighed and put her hand in his palm. Do you remember how happy we were? Do you remember how we dreamed of growing old together? He did remember. And that was the worst part. Because his feelings hadn't completely faded. They sat in the tavern until late at night. Sarah talked about her mistakes, about how sorry she was, how she wanted to fix everything. And Bill. He felt his heart begin to waver. He should have walked away angrily, filed for divorce, forgotten her. But instead he asked, and is this really what you want? Her eyes shone. Yes, Bill. Give us another chance. And he did. They spent the night together, just like old times. The next morning, Sarah was gone. And so was his wallet. Bill woke up with a heavy head and empty pockets. The sun had already risen high, flooding the room with bright light. He looked around, but there was no one else in the apartment. Sarah was gone. His money was gone, too. Bill sat on the edge of the bed and tried to understand what had happened. Yesterday he had given her a second chance, believed in her words, succumbed to his memories. And today she ran away, leaving him once again. That's it, the final end. But this time it was different. He was no longer gnawed by disappointment or pain. All he felt was rage. Bill quickly checked his bank account. Some of the money was missing. He didn't understand how she had done it, but he knew one thing for sure: she hadn't just run away. She had planned it. And this time, he would not let her disappear without a trace. He took out his phone and dialed his friend Jack's number. Sarah's back. Are you kidding me? I'm not kidding. And she stole from me again. Shit. What are we going to do? Bill smiled. And now the game was changing. Jack wasn't just a friend. He was a private investigator. I'll find her, he said. But what do you want to do? I want her to feel the same way I feel. Revenge. No, I want to teach her a lesson. Bill remembered how Sarah had told him about her failures. How her rich lover had dumped her, how she was left with nothing. She thought he was still weak, that he would forgive her just like before. But she was wrong. The next day, Jack called him. We have a lead. She's in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. Bill didn't wait. He got there, opened the door, and saw her. Sarah was sitting on the bed counting money. His money. She looked up, and her face was covered with horror. A bill. It's been a long time, he said, closing the door behind him. She quickly slipped the money behind her back. It's not what you think. Oh, I think it is. He took a step toward her. You've always played with me, always thinking you could fool me. Sarah swallowed her saliva. I can explain everything. No, now listen to me. Bill took out his phone and opened the recording. You didn't know I recorded our conversation yesterday, did you? He pressed the button, and her voice filled the room. "I'm still your wife. I'm entitled to half of what you have left." Her face went pale. "Oh, what are you doing?" Protecting myself. You could have had a chance, Sarah. But you blew it." He took her bag off the table and shook the money out onto the floor. "That's my money, and this." He picked up her passport. "Is your ticket home?" You can't do this to me," he smiled. "Yes, I can, and I will." He walked out, closing the door. Sarah ran to them, but it was too late. He was no longer a victim. Bill stepped outside the motel and took a deep breath of fresh air. Even if the sun was already setting, painting the sky orange and pink. He felt empty. He had won. For the first time in years, he hadn't let Sarah use him. She was left in the motel with no money, hope. And now what? Bill walked to his car, but did not rush to get in. He expected to feel satisfied, relieved. But there was only silence in his chest. Was that it? Or had he just become like her? His phone vibrated in his pocket. Jack. "How'd it go?" She's out of money, out of everything." I don't know, Bill, she deserved it." "Yeah, she did. But that doesn't make you feel any better, does it?" Bill smiled. Jack knew him well. "I don't know what I expected. That she'd beg you to forgive her. That she'd admit her mistakes. Maybe. This isn't a movie, man. Some people just don't change." Bill started the engine but didn't move. He saw a shadow appear in the motel window. It was Sarah. She was looking down, as if she was waiting for him to come back, and then he realized. She didn't care. She had no regrets. She just wanted to take it all back, and he wouldn't let her do it. He drove off. The road stretched before him like a new life, without Sarah, without the past. He had won. But was it a real victory? This question remained unanswered. Bill sat in his new home, holding a glass of whiskey. The evening silence enveloped him, but his mind was racing. A few weeks had passed since he left Sarah at the motel. Ashley hadn't been in his life since. He replayed in his mind all the moments that had brought him to this point. Her first betrayal, their divorce, her return. Her second betrayal. He had forgiven her once. She had done the same thing again. He had no right to be wrong again. Or did he? He picked up his phone, flipping through his contacts. Jack, his old friend, had said that the best way to forget was to start over. But is it possible to just erase a person from your life? Suddenly the phone rang. The number was unknown. Bill could have not answered it. He could have turned off the phone, had a whiskey, gone to bed and forgotten. But something compelled him to take the call. "Hello." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Is that you, Sarah?" A deep breath, and finally her voice, "Hi, Bill." He closed his eyes, feeling the anger rising in him. "What do you want?" "I just want to talk." "Ava, we have nothing to talk about." "Do you really think so?" Bill took a sip of whiskey. "You stole years of my life." "Twice." "I know you did. I know. What do you want? You want me to forgive you again?" The answer didn't come immediately. No," she finally said. "I just want to know if you're happy." Bill laughed. "Are you serious?" Yes." He could have hung up the phone. That would have been the logical thing to do. But something made him stay on the line. I don't know, Sarah. I thought happiness was being with you, but I was wrong. I was wrong too." She said it so simply, as if admitting her mistakes was something she was used to. Now what?" he asked. Silence. I don't know, Bill. I just wanted to hear your voice. I hope you find what you're looking for, Sarah. But don't look for it in me." He pressed, "and call." Bill walked down to the terrace, breathing in the night air. Life goes on, though in a but was this the end? Or was it the beginning of something new?